Hi, Mwape. How are you? Let's see. Hey, Amadou. How are you?
Mr. Jacob, I'm good and you?
Nice to have you around. It's been a while.
Yeah, it's been a while. How are things
How
going?
have you been?
I'm good and you?
Yeah, I've been all right. I mean, last time we spoke was like 4 years ago.
Yeah. Long time ago.
Uh, yeah, it's been extremely long, and I'm sure you agree that a lot of things have changed. So I'm super excited to
Yeah,
hear your voice
me
today.
too, bro. Me too.
Yeah. Generally, how are you doing? Things are okay?
Yeah, things are okay. Things are okay. Still
Oh, okay.
located in Senegal.
Oh, okay.
Still in the telco industry.
Excellent.
Um, a lot of things happen through the journey. I will let you know throughout
Oh, okay.
the live, inshallah.
Brilliant. Brilliant. That's so good. So I think like I explained, what I usually do is I think on Sundays I just try to catch up with friends in terms of what's happening in the infrastructure space, especially in Africa. And I mean, part of the reason for doing that has been to sort of like stay connected with what's happening on the continent, and also just to use it as a way to of course, let other people know exactly in terms of where the gaps are, what sort of progress we're making, and just to use it as a way to stimulate interest around participating in infrastructure development on the continent. So far, I think I've had conversations with different folks, folks in the water sector, folks in the construction sector, and I figured let me have this opportunity of having Amadou on this session just to give us some intel in terms of what's happening on the telecommunication front. So maybe just as a way of starting, I know I did give a brief introduction about you and what you do. Are you able to just tell my viewers in terms of who Amadou is and what you've been up to in the last 5 years?
Sure, sure. First of all, I would like to thank you for having me in this live, Jacob. It's a great pleasure for me to share this moment with you. Yeah, and share my personal experience and what I'm doing in the telco industry here in Senegal, in West Africa, actually, because I cover several countries, 6 countries, to be precise. It's a great pleasure first to be with you, and
You're
second
welcome.
to talk about the telco industry. Talking about myself, I'm strategy and investment professional in the telco industry. I'm 33 years old, and in terms of academic background, after high school, I went in France for university, and I have graduated from an engineering school with an engineering degree in electronics and computer science. Then I joined a business school because actually I found out that what I really wanted to do is not engineering but business. So I went to HEC Paris, where I graduated from in 2016 in corporate finance and business strategy. And after that, I went back to the continent. I came back here in Senegal, and I joined the local affiliate of the Orange Group, which is called Sonatel. Sonatel is the incumbent telco here in Senegal and covers now 6 countries within West Africa. So Senegal, Mali, Guinea-Bissau, and Sierra Leone. So in terms of uh, professional experience. I started my career as an analyst in mergers and acquisitions. Then I moved to project management, where I have been in charge of several projects to structure and finance projects in the energy sector, because Sonatel is also involved in energy. Yeah, and then I have been appointed at the head of the strategic planning activity. And since 2021, I have been appointed at the head of the department in charge of strategic planning and market study for the group. So that's basically who I am. In personal life, I'm married, a father of two little girls, just like you. And yes, that's briefly who I
No,
am.
that's a very impressive background, and thank you so much for sharing that. So just to sort of like put everything into context, I know when we speak about telecommunications infrastructure, it is sort of like a very broad area. But in a nutshell, and just as a way of summarizing it, what would you say telecommunications infrastructure includes?
Telecommunication infrastructure is basically, in my point of view, a tool that that enables people to communicate. Everything that we can have in terms of infrastructure that allow communication, to my point of view, is part of the telco infrastructure. And in the continent, I think it has been one of the major revolution that we've faced in the last 30 years, and allowed us to catch up with the rest of the world. Um, Even though the gap is still high between Africa and the rest of the world, I think telecommunication played a huge role reducing the gap in terms of development, in terms of social development, in terms of quality of life for Africa. And if I make a short story of the telecommunication in Africa, I think basically before 1990s, most of the country only had, and all of the country only had fixed telecommunication infrastructure. So what was possible is only to have a fixed phone, basically, to reach people. And starting from 1995, most of the governments has changed their regulation and has liberalized the telecom market, and it allows to introduce private investment. So most of the country has launched a 2G generation in telco infrastructure that allows mobile communication.
Mhm.
And that's a very important starting point because that's where most of the countries has been able to establish mobile network and allow people to, let's say, to improve their productivity, because it was a very important productivity factor. It reduces the time of coordination. Basically, if you had to bring an information to someone that didn't have the fixed infrastructure, which was not very wide at the time back then,
Mhm.
you were supposed to travel to bring the information. And the mobile infrastructure was, let's say, more easy to roll out. So it reached people, let's say, quicker than the mobile infrastructure. And we have faced a very fast increase of the mobile penetration that went roughly from 0 to more than 90% within 5 to 10 years. And Tidiane Cham. I don't know if you know him, if you know about
Yeah,
him.
I've read quite a bit about him, and I'm a huge fan of his work, and I've been following him quite closely.
Exactly. In the late 1990s, he was the Ministry of Planning in Ivory Coast, and uh, he counted a very interesting story that he had with the World Bank. At the time, World Bank was doing structural adjustments to make sure that, let's say, African governments, let's say, don't go above the engagement in terms of debt, so they can. So the World Bank was actually ruling the strategy of the different African countries, and back then they didn't allow to invest in the telecommunication. And Tijan Cham said to a World Bank specialist that came in Ivory Coast, let's go to people and meet them and ask them what they exactly need. If they need telco infrastructure, so mobile, or they prefer having roads or sanitation or water, what they would prefer, or in a hospital, etc. And then they traveled into remote locations and they asked people. And the first thing that came out of the interview they made was that people needed first telco infrastructure because it had a very big impact on their everyday life. Uh, an old man told him, yes, you can bring a road here, you can bring water and sanitation, which is good, but if you bring telco, I will be able to call my son that works in Abidjan and ask him to deliver everything I need. So I won't need the road and the other aspect of everyday life you can provide, uh, or at least having the telco infrastructure will facilitate the access. So I think in the late 90s, the 2G infrastructure made a major impact in African people's lives. And going further, in let's say 2007, we introduced, most of the countries has introduced the 3G, which was a second major revolution, and the 3G allowed to do basically data. And now, what data can provide in terms of service is extremely is limitless, if I may say so. And we have seen in countries such as Senegal or Mali and Ivory Coast that the penetration of data has went from basically from 0 to more than 100% in less than 10 years. And you can see that the GDP growth has been positively impacted by the data penetration. So that is actually something that proves what I was saying in the beginning. Telco is actually a productivity factor, an important productivity factor for Africa, and has allowed to catch up with the rest of the world, basically. So roughly, that's my view on telco infrastructure. That's how I would sum it up.
Yeah, no, I mean that's very true, and you mentioned a very important point. If we are going to unlock all the potential that exists currently on the African continent, we cannot downplay the role that communication plays, and just how important and crucial it is for us to put together adequate telecommunication infrastructure. Now, as you were going through that explanation, I was sort of like reminded of the current stats that we have on the continent. So roughly we're about 1.4 billion people on the continent. And I think the last time I checked the stats, I was able to see that by 2022, only around 570 million people had access to the internet. So if you compare the population, of course, factoring in children and whatnot, we still have a sizable population of people who still don't have access to the internet. In your own words, what do you think are some of the strategies that we can use to sort of like bridge that gap and just make sure that we're operating at levels where everyone has got pretty much access to the internet?
Brilliant question. Actually, in my point of view, I think we have two types of countries here in Africa in terms of digital inclusion. We have countries such as Senegal, Ivory Coast, etc., that I know better, where for 20 years to 25 years, we have companies that have invested, that has made massive investment to develop infrastructure. So we have in these countries around 100% penetration of internet. And we have other categories of countries. If I take Western Africa countries such as Sierra Leone, etc., that didn't have the chance to have private investment coming and developing the infrastructure. So we have a major gap in those countries. But I think we've made, during the last 5 to 10 years, major improvements. But yes, there is also a lot of things remaining to do. In my point of view, in order to bridge the gap, we have many levers that we can use. First is investment, to encourage investment. All the governments now has specific tax for the telecommunication. If we reduce the tax load on telco, we can enhance investment. In my point of view, that's the first thing. Second thing is, in Africa, we have micro countries, and that limits our potential to have economies of scales. And in my point of view, we can make reforms in order to have multi-countries operations, in order to bring down the cost and enhance investment, in order to develop the infrastructure in multiple countries at the same time, and make sure that we improve the digital inclusion, especially in rural areas. So most of the urban countries are covered. They have a good quality of internet. But the challenge is mostly in rural areas, which are the areas that need more to be included, and to be where investment is to be destinated, if I may say so. So in my point of view, what government would have to work on is to work on the fiscal pressure, to reduce the fiscal pressure, and also to make sure that we can have an operator that can invest in several countries at the same time in order to drive down the cost. Telecommunication is a profitable business. So if we have the good framework, the good regulatory, and the good legal and tax framework, company will invest. In West Africa, Orange invests at least 20% of its revenue to develop infrastructure each year. So if all the governments work together in order to facilitate investment, I think we will be able to reach most of the population, and reduce the population that are not included in a digital point of view.
Excellent. So I think you mentioned something very important. Investments obviously a key driver in terms of gaining ground in this particular industry. So between now and 2030, 2035, I think we need roughly about $100 billion for us to close on the infrastructure gap. Now, from your perspective, where should this funding be going? Is it to build physical infrastructure, or is it to build capacity, or is it to increase access? Where is the gap currently, and where should these monies be going into?
I think in both physical infrastructure. First, I think the basic infrastructure is the access. So we have, like, telco companies have to invest a lot each year to develop the access. So to make mobile sites, basically, to roll out the network and make sure that all the cities are covered. Second thing is to build backbones. Most of the countries still don't have an optical fiber backbone, which is key to enhance the performance of the networks and can support 4G and 5G technology. So that is the second part. And the third part is submarine cables, which is critical to internet access. And today, operators only cannot invest by themselves to develop the submarine cable, which is actually the cable that allows you to reach the internet. So we have GAFAM that has started to put investment on the table because they have an interest on it. We have here in Senegal a cable that is going to be built in 2024-25, which is called To Africa. And yes, Facebook has brought investment on the table in order to support the construction of that submarine cable. So in my point of view, to develop the infrastructure, we have to invest at the same time in all the three parts of the network. Second thing is to invest in data centers, because here in Africa, let's say if we need to watch a YouTube video, we have to go through the whole network and reach the data center of let's say YouTube in Arizona. I don't know. And we need now to work on locate our content and our data locally in Africa. So we need to invest in data centers. We need to invest in cybersecurity, which comes obviously with data centers. And finally, we need to work on developing local content, which is absolutely key in a cultural point of view, but also in a business point of view. We can see that Netflix penetration is increasing a lot, but we need by ourselves to develop our own content in order to make sure that our people stick to that culture. That we're not going in the internet consuming everything and yes, belong to, let's say, a new word. So in my point of view, it's absolutely critical to work also on local content that will be stored in our local data centers.
That's very true. So I think the other way of looking at it, if we develop local content, it obviously drives up usage, and it sort of like also just drives demand in terms of getting access to the internet.
Exactly.
Because personally, if there's nothing that I'm interested in terms of just viewing on the internet or things like that, I would not have that motivation or the drive to consistently seek to access all these internet platforms. Now, of particular interest, obviously, is the backbone that we're speaking of in terms of just building that fiber infrastructure for us to be able to level up. And I know in the last 5, 10 years, we've been hearing about folks laying fiber from Cairo to Cape Town. I think there was also talks around Google doing that. A lot of cables are being laid under the oceans and things like that. But one of the critical challenges that has constantly been coming up is how restrictive government regulations are. And I don't want you to really go into specifics in terms of what challenges government regulation poses. But from your perspective, what role do you think the public sector should play in terms of attracting all these investments that should go into infrastructure development?
Okay. For me, I strongly believe that regulation is an enabler. Regulation is not supposed to block private investment. And unfortunately, in most of the countries, we can see that, yes, we have a regulatory framework that has not, that don't incentivize private investment. Since, let's say, let me give you an example. In some of the countries, you can see that the regulatory bodies ask for national roaming. I don't know if you know about it or not. National roaming is about allowing interconnection of all the different networks within one countries. And if one network fails, the other take over the customer, so that you can ensure the customer full continuity of service, independently his hosting company. But these types of regulation is very capital intensive, because you need, as an operator, to make sure that you cover 100% of the territory, which doesn't make sense every time, because you have some location where people are just passing through in order to reach a village. You have no communities in those areas. And second, you can lose money, because if you don't have a very good dimension of your network. So you need, in order to respect those regulatory dispositions, you need to overinvest, basically.
Absolutely.
You need to overinvest. And most of the operators don't want to overinvest for a very basic reason, because they need to make profit. Telecommunication is a public service, but at the end of the day, investors need to make profit. And if we overinvest, we cannot make profit anymore.
Exactly.
So in my point of view, regulation should be adapted in Africa. Those dispositions can be adapted in countries such as in developed countries, in the US, etc., because you have very high, let's say, RPUs, which is the capacity of the customers to pay. So you can practice very high prices. In Africa, this is not the case. You need to optimize your investment in order to make sure that everyone can afford the prices that you offer, and that you can make profit. So in my point of view, the regulations in African countries should be adapted to our local realities, in order to make sure that operators don't overinvest to respect the regulation, because the regulators has decided to implement a disposition that is common to the telecommunication world, but which is not adapted to our local economic realities. So in my point of view, we need to work in very specific points. And I think the regional organizations can play a huge role on that. Here in West Africa, we have the ECOWAS. So in my point of view, the African Union also have to tackle those challenges in order to make sure that we have regulation that is locally adapted to our economy, and yes, that no regulation that discourage from investment.
That's very true. So what I'm getting from all this conversation is obviously there've been a lot of positive strides towards closing these infrastructure gaps. And just from the elaborate explanation that you've given, it appears as though there's a lot of work that's going on the ground in terms of us just improving in that area. But I guess in closing, what I wanted to find out from you and from your perspective really is where are you seeing us in the next maybe 5, 10 years? What are some of the areas that we need to prioritize now if we are going to catch up in the infrastructure space?
Okay, in terms of perspective, I think in the next 5 to 10 years, I think the digital economy will be accelerated basically, because we can see, as I mentioned before, that digital inclusion drives economic growth, and most of the countries have understood that, and they are playing a role in order to facilitate investment, basically. So I think we are moving ahead, and which is a good thing. And I have a positive. I have hope, let's say, in the future in digital infrastructure, because I can see that the major players are increasing their investment. So infrastructure is going to be developed. We will see side businesses that will obviously being developed. We can see e-commerce, and that start to take off in Africa, especially in Western Africa. We can see the mobile money economy, which is directly linked to telco, that plays also a very important role in terms of economic development. And without telco infrastructure, you cannot have mobile money business. So in the next 5 to 10 years, I think digital plus mobile financial services will be number one in terms of economic power within Africa, since everyone is going to be a user of those services, and in my opinion, most of the businesses will be built around digital and financial services. So that's the perspective I have on infrastructure. But that positive view will only be realized again if governments play the game and allow private investment to be profitable.
Excellent. No, thank you so much. So it's been a very wonderful conversation. So quite a lot of learning, quite a lot of positives coming out. And I think from my perspective, you see there are a lot of all these conventions going on globally, attainment of the SDGs, fighting climate change, whatever it is that we can speak about. I think achieving those particular objectives really will require adequate telecom infrastructure. Because just to give you an example, the time when I moved to the US and when I was in just like grad school, most of my classes were pretty much online. I had it easy to just attend classes because the way they've built their IT infrastructure, I think, supports some of those things. But if you go back to the continent, I think it's a different story. So nice catching up, and thank you so much for offering your perspectives around what's happening in this area. I really do appreciate.
Thank you, Jacob, for having me. It was a
All
pleasure
right, sure. No,
having this.
take care. We'll chat. Thank you.
Bye.
All right, bye-bye. Thanks.